Hey, welcome to the Summit Host Hangout podcast, where you'll learn how to host a high converting virtual summit that leads to your biggest signature offer launch yet. I'm your host, Krista from Summit in a Box, and I'm excited to continue our conversation from the last episode today. And in case you missed that, in the previous episode, we talked about hosting a virtual summit as a highly sensitive person. So like someone who experiences things and feelings and emotions on a deeper level than someone who is quote unquote normal. And even though today's episode is a continuation of that, I do think these two episodes can be relevant for very different people. So you might not be sensitive. So the last episode was maybe not relevant, but your audience might be. And that sensitivity can actually come in many different forms, which I'll, cover some of them. I'm sure I won't hit on all of them. So in the last episode, we talked about highly sensitive in terms of the subset of people who are extra responsive to like everything. But I want to expand that today in what we're talking about for your audience. But today's episode will also be shorter. So even though we're talking about like an expanded type of sensitivity, I just don't have as much experience or as much to say about it. So I think it's going to be shorter, but I still think you'll get the idea. So this can look in a lot of different ways. So I will be sharing a few examples, be giving more of a direction or guideline for you to follow. But then, it's kind of up to your judgment to keep it in mind based on what it looks like for your audience. So when I think of a highly sensitive audience, here are a few examples that come to mind from the summits I have seen run or could imagine being run. And this is not an exhaustive list. So first, it could straight up be a summit for highly sensitive people. I haven't seen that yet. Hello, let's do it. It could be a summit for a neurodivergent audience, whether that's just like all neurodivergence or like a specific subsets of that. That would be, one that would definitely fit in here. It could be a summit for people who have experienced loss. So it's not so much like the way their brain is made, but instead like what they've gone through and they're sensitive because of that. It could be a summit for people healing from some kind of trauma or dealing with that. We've had a client who hosted a summit for women who were child-free not by choice. And she was very, sensitive around how she was speaking to them and how she was setting things up, rightly so. And also consider no matter who you target, you can bet that you'll have people in some kind of sensitive category in your audience. It just might not be as many. So I think this could be a good thing to at least consider, even if you're not making every decision from this lens. So like I said in the last episode, in episode 284, I interviewed one of our Launch with a Summit Accelerator clients, Stephanie Feld. And one of the topics we talked about was how she is highly sensitive. She came into the accelerator expecting to have to modify a bunch of our strategies because of it, but she actually learned what to do from us instead. And we've heard very similar feedback from people with sensitive audiences. Overall, our strategies keep this in mind because I am so sensitive. So it's just kind of built in. It has naturally woven itself into our strategy without me meaning for it to. And now it's definitely becoming more intentional and going to be more intentional with every future update we make to our programs, because now I know to look for it and know why I am the way that I am, basically. But I want to start walking through some examples of how you can keep your sensitive audience in mind. Some of these will be more relevant based on the type of sensitivity. The first one that I think is just good for everyone to keep in mind and do the best you can is to focus on people over profit, right? I think it's easy when we go into something like hosting a summit to just think, how can I make as much money as possible? Let's flip that. How can I help people as deeply as possible? Or how can I help as many people as possible, right? And this is something I always do. It's a core piece of our strategy and our programs. So if you're in Summit in a Box, if you're in the Launch with the Summit Accelerator, I'm guiding you through this without you even realizing it maybe. But I think it's so important to make decisions to serve your people first. The good news is when you're serving other people well, the results will naturally come back to you, especially if you've, set it up for that to happen. But if you're looking to add extra pressure or purposely make your event difficult to consume so people buy the all access pass, maybe consider rethinking that, right? Let's focus on people over profit. Let's give them a good experience that they are happy to pay money to continue instead of oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed that I have to pay out this money, right? And like I said, when you focus on people first, a lot of what you need to do to see a good return for your summit will just happen as a byproduct of that, which is really cool. So let's focus on people over profit no matter what. This next one, I think, is more for emotionally sensitive audiences. And that is being a cheerleader versus stirring up pain points more than you need to, right? I know there are differing thoughts and feelings on pain points at all. One reframe I really like is from Ellie Runkles. She used to be my copywriter. She is our lead client success coach in the Accelerator. She is the co-founder of Supported CEO. She's all kinds of places. She's wonderful. But she reframed pain points as empathy points. And I think that just gives us a much healthier and more supportive way to go about talking about these things. Because I think bringing up pain points, empathy points is important in a way for people to see what you can help them with, right? But you can paint the picture enough to resonate without having to turn it into manipulation, So do what you need to do for your audience to be able to see themselves in what you're doing and see how it could help them. But do it from a standpoint of being a cheerleader from there and lifting them up versus using it to using it as a dagger, basically, to make it even worse. But this will show up on your registration page and how you are discussing what they're going to get out of the event, marketing for your All Access Pass, consider it in your presentation topics. How can we lift them up instead of making them focus on what's wrong, right? Another one for emotionally sensitive audiences is creating a safe space in your summit community and protecting it. So of course, I think it's important to have a private community where not just anyone can go see what's being said. For some people, based on your specific audience, being off of Facebook with that community might be a better idea. I think 95% of the people listening to this podcast would prefer to be off Facebook, but the truth is that's just where you're going to get the most engaged community, because no matter how much we dislike it, more people are there than anywhere else. They're not having to log in separately to Circle or something like that, which they rarely remember to do, right? For most people, you're going to get the best results from your community if it is on Facebook. But sometimes with very sensitive audiences where things need to feel more private, you need to make sure it's a safe space. Being off of Facebook can be beneficial for that. I think it's also really helpful if that is your audience to have set guidelines around what is and isn't okay, what is supportive versus not, and then to moderate it closely and just show a ton of love and support. And the cool thing is the more that you do that in your community, the more other people are going to mirror it. So it just makes such a beautiful place to be. If your audience is going through something hard, or if they are really sensitive to putting themselves out there, you might see that it takes more to get them talking. Something you can do to help with that is inviting your speakers and friends and people in your community already to set the example of what it looks like to interact and share. If people see other people talking, they're going to be more likely to dive in as well. But do what you need to do to create a safe space and then protect that space. Another example I have is maybe less for emotionally sensitive audiences, but more for those of you with neurodivergent audiences, people dealing with some kind of trauma. But honestly, it could be a good call for people, dealing with any kind of deep emotions too. And that is carefully considering how you use countdown timers. For some of you, that might mean reconsidering them altogether, even though it would absolutely have an impact on the results, or just being thoughtful about how you implement them. So I absolutely think timers are helpful in encouraging people to make a decision and understand the time frame that's available, right? You don't want to be this is available for 30 minutes and not have anything that clearly communicates that, but you can be thoughtful about how you do it. So option one is removing timers completely. I don't love that. Part of it from a results standpoint, we typically see 70% or more of sales of your All Access Pass come from the fast action offer. So the offer someone gets right after they register. I typically recommend having an early bird price and closing the cart on your All Access Pass after the summit. Having timers, I truly think, is helpful for people to be able to visualize the fact that there's a deadline. No matter what, no matter how clear you are, there's always emails from people afterwards being oh, I didn't realize it was going to expire. Oh, I missed the deadline. How much worse is it going to be if you don't have anything at all, right? But some of you might decide that you have to remove them completely. Something else to consider is extending the length of your fast action timer. So if you have a neurodivergent audience and you're great, you just signed up, you have 20 minutes to pay $100 for this thing you've never seen before, that might send them into a spiral. Maybe we want to give them longer than 20 minutes. Maybe you want to give them an hour. Maybe you want to give 24 hours. I do expect that those would affect conversion rates a little bit, especially increasing to 24 hours, but it's more important to support your audience with what they need, right? So that's something you can consider. If it's people dealing with trauma and things like that, of course, I would recommend giving them a little time to think about it so they're not having to feel panicked as well. And then something else to consider is allowing your timers to be hidden. Like we use deadline funnels for our timers. We switched to Countdown Hero for a while. It was too glitchy with Kajabi, so we switched back to deadline funnel. What I like about deadline funnel is that there is an option you can turn on where people can click a button to hide the timer. And that can be really helpful for people to not see like this flashing, number constantly changing in their peripherals while they're trying to read this page. So if you can hide your timers, I would do that. I've heard of people, we have countdown timers on our presentation pages. So when someone is watching a presentation from a speaker, at the very bottom of that page, there's a timer that counts down to how much time is left to watch the presentation for free. I think it's fine at the bottom of the page, but like having that at the top of the page where they wouldn't be able to hide it or, watch the video without seeing it, that would be a lot to deal with. So just kind of be thoughtful about the way you're using countdown timers, and that's going to change based on who your audience is and in what way they're sensitive. The next thing I want to talk about is your All Access Pass offer. I don't have a ton to say about this other than like thinking through what will be extra supportive for them in the All Access Pass. Is it a deeper space to connect? Is it a certain kind of support? Is it a certain type of resource? Like, don't be afraid to think outside the box. Come at it from the standpoint of like, my audience is sensitive in this way. What can I provide that will support that, right? And like also think of it for your free ticket as well. Like I think captions are important really for any audience these days, but is there something you can do for your free ticket holders that can help? Something I've started doing, well, I guess I've used a quiz ever since the beginning to help people like sort through which presentations they should watch, but I've started doing that in other ways and in more deeper ways throughout the summit to help them like eliminate any overwhelm and kind of promoting that more widely. So that's something you can consider as well for your free ticket. Another thing, 2 more examples of how you can kind of, modify the way you're hosting your summit for a sensitive audience. Next is the support being offered. And by this, I mean, how is your team showing up in your inbox and in your community? So this could look like just being extra understanding and patient and gracious in your responses. If that's not you, hire someone who, those words would describe them. I am at a point where like, I'm just not going to take garbage from someone. I spent 3 months putting everything I have into this event. If you don't like that, I'm limiting it to 48 hours of free access. I'm sorry, I'm not bothered. That's why Kate's in the inbox and not Krista, right? Because there are some things I just can't with. If someone's rude, like I'm not going to deal with it. Am I going to be rude back? I'm not going to be rude back, but sometimes I have trouble with the whole kill 'em with kindness thing. Kate doesn't. Kate's in the inbox, right? I think here canned responses and stuff are also really helpful to just take any emotion out of the response. But also maybe you're more willing to make exceptions. If someone missed the deadline for a discount, how do you want to look at that? Also look at support as a way to serve. I think we get, myself included, sassy about customer support, what we have to deal with, the constant questions being asked that you've already answered 50 places that, if they just read the email they responded to, they would have their answer. But look at support as a way to serve your audience, and that reframe can sometimes be really helpful. And then the last thing I want to talk about is just like general accessibility. Maybe if your audience is sensitive or neurodivergent and they have trouble focusing or whatever, you give 48 hours of free presentation access versus 24. We've made that change for our lots of summits and haven't noticed a difference in numbers because of it. We get very positive feedback about that. Make sure no matter what, you should have video controls on so people can speed up and slow down videos, rewind the video, see how long is left, things like that. We actually mistakenly had that off for a summit we hosted in 2024 and very quickly got very upset people in the inbox. Totally wasn't on purpose. We just missed it. But like the passion of the responses we got just showed me how important those things are for a lot of people. Having captions and or transcripts are also, I think, really important, especially if you have a sensitive audience, especially if they're neurodivergent. And then having audio and video options can be really helpful. Adding a free audio feed to our free ticket is something we've added in the last 2 summits, and I think it's really helpful for some people. So if our videos are available for 48 hours for free, we also have an audio feed available for 48 hours for free. And yeah, that just kind of adds some accessibility and supports people with different ways they are okay with consuming content and different ways they can actually process that content. So I hope this was helpful. I don't think every person has to worry about all of these things. I also know for a fact there are some things that I've missed here. Feel free to respond to our emails or DM me on Instagram if there's anything that I missed that you want to talk about or talk through it, anything like that. But I think it's really important for us to think through these things, especially if you know your audience is a sensitive group. But I hope this was helpful, and thank you so much for tuning in. For show notes and resources, go ahead, head to the link in the episode description wherever you're listening. In the next episode, I'm going to have a guest on to talk about how he leveraged relationships and marketing to stand out and host a multi-six-figure summit. A little bit of a whiplash, I think, from this topic, but it's going to be a fun one. And for now, go out and take action to plan, strategize, and launch your high-converting virtual summit.